Hey, welcome to FISM News. I'm Samuel Case.
And I'm Renata Kish.
And tonight, Trump is convicted in his hush money trial.
Meanwhile, his supporters respond with massive donations.
And Ukraine prepares to use American weapons on Russian soil. Well, naturally, we begin with this. For the first time in American history, a former president has been convicted of a crime. A Manhattan jury yesterday found Donald Trump guilty of all 34 charges in his hush money case. Here's DA Alvin Bragg, the one who brought the case against Trump, making that announcement.
The 12 everyday jurors vowed to make a decision based on the evidence and the law, and the evidence and the law alone. Their deliberations led them to a unanimous conclusion beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant, Donald J. Trump, is guilty of 34 counts of falsifying business records in the first degree to conceal a scheme to corrupt the 2016 election.
The conviction pertains to hush money payments Trump made to porn star Stormy Daniels in order to cover up an alleged affair. Trump responded to the verdict, saying he's been the victim of a rigged trial.
This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. The real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people. And they know what happened here, and everybody knows what happened here. This was done by the Biden administration in order to wound or hurt an opponent, a political opponent, and I think it's just a disgrace. And we'll keep fighting. We'll fight till the end, and we'll win.
Each felony charge carries a maximum sentence of 4 years in prison. Sentencing will take place on July 11th, and Trump says he does plan to appeal. And for even more reactions to the Trump verdict, we now go to FISM's Ian Patrick.
The Trump verdict was met outside the courthouse with both cheers and boos from regular Americans who gathered to hear. Unsurprisingly, it also drew swift bipartisan reaction in Washington. For starters, House Speaker Mike Johnson decried the conviction, posting an official response on X shortly after the announcement. Johnson said, quote, "Today is a shameful day in American history. Democrats cheered as they convicted the leader of the opposing party on ridiculous charges, predicated on the testimony of a disbarred convicted felon. This was a purely political exercise, not a legal one." Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell also responded, saying the charges, quote, "never should have been brought in the first place." Other Republicans issued similar statements. And most Democrats were happy about the verdict, on the other hand. California Representative Adam Schiff said the verdict was justice, while Rhode Island Senator Sheldon Whitehouse simply said boom in response. The Biden campaign was, of course, excited about the verdict as well. Spokesman Michael Tyler said the verdict proved that, quote, "no one is above the law." But he continued, saying, quote, "there is still only one way to keep Donald Trump out of the Oval Office, and that's at the ballot box. Convicted felon or not, Trump will be the Republican nominee for president." And in fact, it's comments like that which have many saying that this trial was nothing more than just lawfare against Trump and an attempt to try and keep him out of office. Speaker Johnson continued to say that the American people can see through such a guise during an interview on Fox News this morning.
I'm telling you that the people see right through it. I've been all across the country, north, south, east, west. Doesn't matter whether I'm in a blue state or a red state. People are disgusted by this. They see exactly what's happening. Old charges, a tainted judge. I mean, think of it. In the last couple of weeks, they've been apoplectic. They want Justice Alito to be recused from, future cases and proceedings because his wife flew a flag at their house. This judge on this case in Manhattan was an open Biden supporter, an open, activist, a political activist, and no one cared about that. So the double standard is clear. Everybody sees it.
Meanwhile, independent presidential candidate RFK Jr. also weighed in on the lawfare aspect specifically, indicating that it would actually likely backfire against the Democrats.
This conviction is going to backfire on the Democrats. I think every time that President Trump has been indicted, that his approval ratings actually increase, his popularity increases. I think there's a large number of Americans who are going to see this as the politicization of and the weaponization of the enforcement agencies. And I think it's going to hurt. It's bad for our democracy. I think the Democrats feel like they have, the DNC feels like it has a candidate that cannot win fair and square in the polls. And so they have to win in the courts. They have to win by clearing the deck and getting their other opponents out of the race.
Now, RFK Jr.'s comments actually seem to be ringing true. Beyond Washington, Trump supporters are coming to the former president's defense in droves. Shortly after the verdict was announced, the Trump campaign website received a flood of donations, which ultimately led to crashing the website for at least a short amount of time. In addition, a new poll released on Thursday showed that 67% of voters say they would not be swayed by a guilty verdict for the former president. Another 15% said it would actually make them more likely to vote for Trump, while 17% said it would sway them to not vote for Trump. This is Ian Patrick reporting for FISM News.
Meanwhile, X and News Nation are planning separate town hall events for former President Trump and independent candidate RFK Jr., the one you just saw on the screens. Sources told Axios that the pair reportedly agreed to an event called the People's Town Hall, though details have yet to be confirmed. Social media platform X pitched an online town hall to News Nation to revolutionize how people could access political content. The live feed will be available to all X users globally, and the event will have a live feed where users can submit questions to moderators who will select relevant questions. The moderators will likely be News Nation hosts and journalists. Axios says that the idea for a live social media town hall came from X CEO Linda Yaccarino. She said that X is trying to provide a platform for people where they can have a bigger voice in the political process.
Should certainly be interesting. We'll have to tune into that when it happens. Elsewhere, the Justice Department has now reached a settlement with former FBI officials Peter Strzok and Lisa Page over the leak of private anti-Trump messages. According to those messages, during the 2016 election, Strzok and Page, who were having an affair at the time, described Trump as an idiot and a loathsome human, with Strzok even vowing to, quote, stop Trump from getting elected. Both of them were also involved in the FBI's Trump-Russia investigation as well. Following the leak, Strzok was fired and Page was forced to resign soon after. Now, the details of this new settlement, they're not currently known at this time and are still tentative, pending approval from a judge.
And before a break here, the Supreme Court unanimously sided with the National Rifle Association in a First Amendment dispute. Back in 2018, the NRA filed a lawsuit against Maria Vuyo, the head of New York's Department of Financial Services, for forcing companies not to do business with the gun advocate group. But Justice Sotomayor ruled in favor of the NRA's complaint. She cited a 1963 Supreme Court case to say that the government could not unconstitutionally coerce someone to violate their First Amendment rights, meaning in this case that the New York financial group cannot threaten NRA partners for continuing their relationships with the gun rights group. First Amendment litigation director at Columbia University, Alex Abdu, celebrated the verdict. He said the Supreme Court's decision was important because it affirmed that the government may not coerce others to suppress constitutionally protected speech. And we'll get into some international news up next when we come back.
There are moments in life that define us. Choices determine the courses we take. Choices that create life, or those that save a life. And some make life worthwhile. There are decisions to stay, or to go, to remain the same, or to grow. Sometimes we pray and make peace. Other times we take a stand for what we believe. In celebration, mourning, triumph, and defeat, we are invested in every decision we seek. Despite differences, we have one thing in common: the desire to do all for the glory of God. Keep your wallet aligned with your heart and your investments in harmony with your faith. Timothy Plan, biblically responsible mutual funds, ETFs, and retirement plans. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing.
The miracle of carrying a child creates a unique bond between a mother and her unborn baby. She feels the baby's movements and responds to their needs even before birth. Help create that bond between an abortion-minded mother and her unborn child by giving the gift of life through Preborn. During the month of May, you can bless your mom for Mother's Day by giving to Preborn on your mother's behalf. For $28, you can sponsor an ultrasound scan that will enable an abortion-minded woman to hear the heartbeat of her baby. 90% of the time, that sound will change a woman's mind and cause her to keep their baby. Give the gift of life to the woman that gave you life by sponsoring an ultrasound. Go to preborn.com/FISM to give. That's preborn.com/FISM. You can help an abortion-minded mother receive discipleship, encouragement, and the strength needed to have her baby.
And welcome back to FISM News. I'm Renata Kish. Well, let's continue with some updates from Ukraine. Germany and the U.S. have announced recently that they will allow Ukraine to use their long-range missiles on Russian soil. Despite the significant change in policy, the decision comes at a time when Ukrainian forces are losing ground to Russia. Here's Secretary of State Antony Blinken confirming Biden's approval.
Over the past few weeks, Ukraine came to us and asked for the authorization to use weapons that we're providing to defend against this aggression, including against Russian forces that are massing on the Russian side of the border and then attacking into Ukraine. That went right to the president, and as you've heard, he's approved the use of our weapons for that purpose.
The Ukrainian border region Kharkiv has been pummeled by Russian forces within the past month. A ballistic missile hit an apartment in the area, killing at least 6 people, according to Ukrainian officials. The officials also said that Russia is now moving south to the Donetsk region, and they are planning attacks in the north in the Sumy region as well.
Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has some rather harsh words for the Biden administration for refusing to back sanctions against the International Criminal Court. A bipartisan group of lawmakers recently announced plans to sanction the ICC after its lead prosecutor requested arrest warrants for top Israeli leaders for alleged war crimes in Gaza. The White House said this week that Biden does not support sanctioning the ICC, which Netanyahu said is disappointing.
Frankly, I'm surprised and disappointed because I think it's to the detriment not only of Israel's interest, I think it's to the detriment of America's interest, because Israel may be attacked first by the ICC, but you're next. America's really the target. And the terrorists who are attacking us and the mobs who support them in America, they chant death to Israel, death to America. When that is backed by a rogue prosecutor in the ICC, it's in America's interest, for America's security and for our common values to sanction the ICC.
The White House says it does not believe that sanctions are an effective or an appropriate path forward.
Meanwhile, drama continues in the Israeli war cabinet. Prime Minister Netanyahu's opponent, Benny Gantz's party, proposed a bill to dissolve the parliament amid growing tensions in the Israel-Hamas conflict. Gantz called on Netanyahu earlier this month to have a so-called day-after plan for the Gaza war by June 8th, or he would quit the government. A lawmaker for Gantz's National Unity Party said in a statement that their newly proposed bill would allow the formation of a broad and stable unity government that would help Israel get back on its feet. The lawmakers said, quote, "Proposing the bill now will allow us to raise the issue in the current session."
And Israel has also now decided to lift its ban on food sales to the West Bank and Gaza Strip. As of yesterday, Palestinian distributors were allowed to begin purchasing food from Israeli vendors for the first time since October 7th. And it's also the very first commercial activity with Gaza residents since the deadly attack as well. An IDF spokesman said it's mainly meant for humanitarian purposes, saying, quote, "Allowing for the private sector to bring some food into the Gaza Strip is part of those efforts to increase the amount of food that's coming in." The change in policy comes as the IDF continues to see victories against Hamas in Gaza. Israel claims to have eliminated hundreds of terrorists after storming Hamas tunnels underneath the city of Jabalia.
And earlier this week, Swedish officials accused Iran of hiring criminals to harass Israeli and Jewish targets in Sweden. Swedish counterintelligence official Daniel Stenling told reporters at a press conference that the Swedish government can establish that criminal networks in Sweden are used as a proxy by Iran. The announcement follows a series of attacks on the Israeli embassy earlier this year. In late January, the Israeli embassy in Stockholm was sealed off following reports that a hand grenade was thrown into the building. While law enforcement did not state what the object was, they explained that there was no explosion and the object was safely destroyed. On May 17th, the area around the embassy was once again sealed off after gunshots were reported in the area. Though officials did not name any specific gangs in their announcement, Swedish authorities have struggled against high-profile foreign gangs for years. Middle Eastern gangs in the country have been connected to many of the 85 shootings reported this year, 12 of which were fatal.
And before we go to break, Slovenia is now the latest country to officially recognize a Palestinian state, following the footsteps of Ireland, Norway, and Spain this month. Here's Prime Minister Robert Golob making that announcement yesterday.
Danes je vlada sprejela odločitev, da prizna državo.
Today, the government has made a decision to recognize the state of Palestine as an independent and sovereign state within the boundaries set by the United Nations. We are talking about the borders of 1967, or the borders that would be agreed upon by the parties involved in a future peace agreement. The decision has one message to all parties, that we want an immediate cessation of hostilities and that we want an immediate and unconditional release of the hostages.
Israel quickly condemned the move, saying it basically rewards Hamas for their October 7th terror attack. Meanwhile, Britain and Australia are also considering official recognition as well, though a number of other countries, such as Germany, Denmark, and the U.S., they have all rejected the idea, at least for now. All right, and we have plenty more news coming up next, but first, let's go back in time with Seth Udinsky for today's A Moment in History.
Welcome back to A Moment in History. I'm Seth Udinsky. Well, in this episode, let's explore one of the most important and understandably controversial men in the history of the United States. He was in every sense both a hero and a complicated figure. His contribution to the formation of the United States was vital, and he was a public critic of slavery, yet he famously held possibly hundreds of slaves in his Monticello estate and possibly even committed adultery and fathered children with one of them. Still, he was one of the most influential figures in American history. He was Thomas Jefferson, founding father and third president of the United States. Like a few of his fellow founding fathers, Jefferson was a red-blooded Virginian, born in 1743 and raised there in a somewhat wealthy family. As a young man, he entered the political sphere of the British colonies as a member of the House of Burgesses. Now, also like men who would become his fellow founding fathers, Jefferson became caught up in the revolutionary spirit of the colonies in the 1770s and also became one of the most vital proponents for liberty. At the age of 33, he oversaw the creation of one of the most important founding documents of the United States, the Declaration of Independence, of which he was one of the signers. Now, several years earlier, Jefferson had wed a widow by the name of Martha Skelton. The couple remained together for 10 years before Martha's death in her early 30s. During this time, Jefferson also conducted the building of his famous mansion at his Monticello estate. Well, Jefferson would serve in various roles at the beginning of the nation. He was mighty with the pen as a member of the Continental Congress, and in 1785, after the war, he would replace Benjamin Franklin as the American ambassador to France. This role would actually set the stage for a fierce political rivalry between Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton. Now, Jefferson was friendly to the French notions of rebellion, and keep in mind, right at this time, France's revolution has taken place. It happened in 1789, while Hamilton was more privy to the English style of government for the new nation. Now, Jefferson is perhaps the most famous for his role later in life, as he served as the third president of the United States after John Adams. During his administration, he continued to solidify the growth of the young Union and executed perhaps the most important financial transaction in the country's history, of course, the Louisiana Purchase with France. His goodwill with France paid off as he doubled the nation's size in the early 1800s. Now, Jefferson was indeed a controversial figure. There's ample evidence, though it's not 100% solidified, but it is pretty sure that he fathered illegitimate children through one of his many slaves at Monticello. Though he was a critic of slavery, he did not personally rid his household of the practice, as some sources indicate that he had scores of slaves during his lifetime. Still, Jefferson was a mighty figure in the foundation of the country, and one of his most influential acts was establishing the precedent for religious liberty in America, which established the protection of the church from government interference in the separation of church and state. Thanks so much for joining me once again for A Moment in History.
Through the ministry of Preborn, the Financial Issues family has saved tens of thousands of lives of babies. What an amazing job that God has done through you, the Financial Issues family. Would you join us in saving the lives of babies? What an amazing reunion we will have in glory, meeting all the people that we have saved. Please go to preborn.org, that is preborn.org, or financialissues.org, and click on the Preborn banner.
If investing with biblical values is important to you, you're not alone. Millions of people invest their money according to their personal beliefs. That's why we offer a subscription service that gives you access to biblically responsible stocks, buys and sells, and a portfolio tracker tool that tracks your asset allocations. Being a Financial Issues partner is the best way to ensure your investments reflect your values. At Financial Issues, we believe in providing our partners with the best possible information and resources so they can make informed decisions about their money. With our help, you can feel confident that your investments are in line with your personal beliefs. Gain access to our biblically based stock buys and sells for only $132 per year. Invest biblically, responsibly. Go to financialissues.org and become a partner today. That's financialissues.org.
Welcome back once again to FISM News. Well, let's continue with this. Police arrested a Brooklyn man after he seemingly tried to mow down religious Jews in his car on Wednesday. Authorities say he shouted anti-Semitic slurs at the time. The episode took place outside a Jewish school and was caught on video. No one was harmed, fortunately. Meanwhile, Wayne State University in Detroit became the latest school to call in the police to clear an anti-Israel protest encampment. The university president says that most of the protesters were not affiliated with the school and resisted good faith efforts to end the protest without police involvement. 12 arrests were made yesterday. Progressive Representative Rashida Tlaib was also present, reportedly on behalf of one person arrested.
She'll remember it for the rest of her life. You took her Islamic Bible. You care anything about them.
Hopefully you're proud of yourself.
His father.
You're proud of yourself.
His father's right here. His wife
yeah,
was
be
here.
tough, big
His
guys, I'm proud. Be tough, big guys, I'm proud. It's not little women that is half of your size. Half of your size. I'm on the public side. I'm on the public. He can't arrest me for being here. You want to arrest me too? For being here, arrest me. It's a freedom of speech. I'm going to say whatever I want to say.
Elsewhere, the new College of Florida is considering withholding diplomas from students who shouted pro-Hamas chants during the May 17th commencement.
Elsewhere, we're now learning that the Philadelphia District Attorney has been giving free legal help to illegal immigrants, including those charged with violent crimes. That's according to new documents obtained by the Immigration Reform Law Institute. And they say that DA Larry Krasner helped those accused of rape, robbery, and other heinous crimes, apparently all in an effort to keep them from being deported. Krasner says his office is dedicated to, quote, immigration-neutral results, which often involves lowering charges for non-citizens and reducing immigration-related consequences such as deportation. As reported by the Daily Caller, in 2023, Krasner's office helped 29 DUI cases, 21 aggravated assaults, and 12 firearm cases, all from illegal immigrants, mind you, and that's just to name a few of the cases he helped with. However, they also do say it's not clear at this time if those charged with the most serious of the crimes listed ended up with reduced charges or not.
Meanwhile, the DOJ is equating conservative advocacy group Moms for Liberty with the KKK. Internal emails obtained by the Daily Wire revealed that the Department of Justice has been tracking Moms for Liberty alongside symbols such as a noose, the Confederate flag, and a swastika. The only other groups that received similar treatment were the KKK itself and groups associated with that movement. While it remains unknown why the DOJ was tracking the conservative educational group, the Daily Wire said the documents seemed to suggest that they were tracking Moms for Liberty's influence on school boards. The group advocates for conservative educational policies and parental rights. Their effort also includes replacing far-left leaders on school boards as well.
Elsewhere, Republicans on the House coronavirus panel are now demanding to see Dr. Anthony Fauci's personal emails and his cell phone records. Committee Chair Brad Wenstrup says they now have emails from one of Fauci's top senior advisors, Dr. David Morens, that suggest the use of backdoor communication channels used specifically to avoid oversight from the government. In one email, he says, quote, "I forgot to say there's no worry about Freedom of Information Acts." That's the oversight we're talking about here. "I can either send them to Tony," that's Dr. Fauci, "on his private email or hand it to him at work or at his house." Meanwhile, it also appears that Morens outright deleted emails for the same exact reason as well. Fauci now has until June 12th to hand over his communications and is set to testify next week.
Meanwhile, Boeing created a roadmap to resolve their safety problems, which caused quite a stir earlier this year. The Federal Aviation Administration says the company submitted the improvement plan ahead of a 90-day deadline. It's the first step in clearing Boeing of increased federal oversight following a mid-flight panel blowout on a Boeing 737 earlier this year. An incident report suggests that missing bolts might have been behind the accident. In a later probe, the regulators say that they found issues in the company's manufacturing process, parts handling, and product control. The manufacturer is not cleared to produce more MAX 9 jets until they follow through with the plan.
And finally, wrapping up our show for this week, something very special is happening in the sky over the next few days. That is from now until Monday. Mercury, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune will all be aligned during the early dawn hours in what is being dubbed a, quote, parade of planets. It's very cool, but unfortunately, very few people are actually going to be able to see all 6 planets aligned, and there's a couple reasons for that. One of them is that both Jupiter and Mercury will both be on the lower horizon. That means it's going to be very difficult to see them, while Uranus can only be seen in remote areas with little to no light pollution. Still, if you'd like to give it a shot, experts do say your best bet to catch a glimpse of all 6 is going to be by using a good telescope and also checking online to see when exactly the alignment will happen in your area. But if you do happen to miss this one, you'll have 2 more chances in the near future. One of them on August 28th and then the other on January 18th. So the question is, Renata, do you want to get up early tomorrow morning and see if you can catch the glimpse?
Yeah. No, definitely not.
I think you have to get up something at like 4 a.m. to be able to maybe see it,
Yeah.
and I don't have a telescope.
Yeah, I don't have a telescope either, and I don't live in an area where I think I would be able to have a good view of the planets. But it does sound really cool.
It's neat.
So.
Well, you have the other options if you do change your mind.
Right. All right, well, that's our program for today. Thank you so much for joining us, and please visit FISMnews.tv for more content.
Yeah, and for more updates until Monday, be sure to check us out on social media. Just type in @FISM News, or you can also download the FISM app to take us on the go. Thanks so much, God bless, and we'll see you on Monday.